What's up, boxing fans, friends of mine? Episode 12 of the Slip and Wave podcast. Let's get it. Friday because this past Tuesday was the end of the bubble at the MGM. So I kind of wanted to wait until that final fight card and then be able to talk about all the cards that had happened and since the 14th and talk a little bit about what's coming up, because this week it seemed like the full business of boxing started to open up. More promoters announcing fights pretty quickly, and some high-level ones too, probably the most high-level fights that have been announced since boxing's come back at the beginning of June. But before we talk about any of that, I just want to take a second to say rest in peace to Naazim Richardson, one of my favorite trainers to watch work, man. The way he had this way of communicating with fighters, particularly older fighters, where it was like he knew that you could still do it, even if everyone else didn't. And it was almost like code language listening to him and Bernard Hopkins in the corner together. It was just a joy to watch him, man. My favorite trainer to watch work. R.I.P. to Naazim Richardson, true legend. So last Tuesday on the 14th, the main event was Michaela Mayer against Helen Joseph. But before that, all of these cards have 5-6 fights on them. A bunch of them get canceled from coronavirus. And I usually just pick the ones that, stuck out for me or are fighters that I'm impressed with and guys that, or girls that I want to share with you. So that night that Michaela Mayer fought, there was another guy on there named Clay Collard, who you may remember me talking about within the last couple of weeks. Kind of, I think he's an MMA transplant, and he's got this really weird volume style, but he wound up stopping a guy named Laurent T. Nelson from South Africa. Not much of a fighter, but it was fun watching Collard, man. And I could hear Tim Bradley when they were announcing the fight that he really likes this guy. I like him too, man. I like that he's kind of awkward, but he does know how to box. He knows how to avoid punches. He knows how to get power on his shots. A lot of times you see when MMA guys transition into boxing, they're so used to fighting with those 4-ounce gloves that they're not punching from their feet, they're punching from their arms. They're not level to the ground. It's very arm punchy. This guy really knows how to sit down on his shots. And he got this guy out of there pretty quickly. Collard improved to 8-2-3 with 3 knockouts. He's got one of those weird journeyman records, but it's like, they keep putting him on TV and he keeps beating these guys. So at a certain point, how long can it be an upset for? At a certain point, you're the A side, right? Isn't that how that works? You beat enough guys. So I really like Clay Collard. I would say keep looking out for him. He's one of the good stories of boxing in 2020. Coming out of nowhere, not the best technique, but a really good boxing IQ. And when I say he doesn't have the best technique, he does have pretty good technique. It's just not standard. But he keeps himself in position. He's a very good fighter. The main event of that card was junior lightweight Michaela Mayer. She's 13-0, beat Helen Joseph. And this was like a very, very thorough performance. Before the fight, it kind of seemed like everyone was talking about Joseph like she was going to be Michaela's toughest test to date. And that may be the case, but it didn't look like it. That was easy work for Michaela. Just her feet, her combinations, her ability to punch in the pocket and then get out really quickly. She's got all the goods, man. I mean, there's very little she can't do. She stays really long. She uses her height well, but she knows when to kind of sit down and get your respect and then get out. And she does not get hit very much. It's really pretty impressive. And Joseph, she was really on the front foot like almost the whole fight. And she just couldn't get to her. The one thing I'll say about Mayer, this is like the only thing, sometimes I was watching her and it would look like her back foot was kind of completely planted on the ground. And for fighters, if you don't know this, a lot of times you want to have your back foot be up on the ball of your foot so that your mobility is a little better. With the front foot planted a little more, the back foot up on the ball of the foot, step forward, step back, step to the side, pivot out. So I'm wondering, if somebody with some more power caught her, if for whatever reason that would mess up her balance or I don't know. But it seems to work for her, and she's super mobile. So maybe that's just how she fights. Seems like she would be even more mobile than she already is if she got that back foot up. But hey, who the fuck am I? On the 16th, that following Thursday, there were some really good fights. There was a heavyweight named Jared Anderson, 5-0, 5 knockouts. Knocked out a guy named Hector Perez in the first round. And I really like this guy, Jared Anderson, man. He's 20 years old. He's absolutely gigantic. He's like 6'4", 240. Really athletic, particularly for a heavyweight. It looks like he's got some nice body work that he can do, which a lot of heavyweights don't do. They don't want to get that low and get that close. He shoots a nice body shot. He looks very athletic and fluid. There's not a lot of heavyweights that are athletic and fluid. There's heavyweights that punch hard. There's guys that are athletic. There's guys that have nice movement but not a lot to go with it. This guy looks like, so far, he's got all the things. So it'd be interesting to see as they keep progressing him, what other layers he can show us. Because I think he looks like maybe he's a complete boxer, which outside of Tyson Fury, there's not a lot of those in the heavyweight division. I guess maybe Luis Ortiz is a pretty complete fighter overall. But there's not a lot of them. So I'm really excited about this kid. To definitely keep your eye out for Jared Anderson. The main event of that one was a first-round knockout. Felix Verdejo knocked out a guy named Will Madera in the first round. Madera was undefeated going in. Madera was 15-0-3. And they were saying that he had been at Verdejo's last fight. Verdejo, at one time, 5-6 years ago, was like the biggest prospect in boxing, and has had some inactivity. He took a loss. He's had some very flat performances, but overall, this is a very talented lightweight with a lot of length and a really stiff jab that's very difficult to get past. And Madero was saying, I was at his last fight. He's taking shots he shouldn't take. If I can take him deep, I think it's easy work. And there was just complete class difference on this one. Verdejo has that beautiful, crisp amateur style with the perfect technique, right out of a textbook. And Tim Bradley was saying this, and I think I agree with it. I think he's got the best jab in the lightweight division at 135, period. He's not the best fighter, I don't think, but as far as if you're just looking at his jab, that's the best jab at 135 right now. I think he's a problem for anybody they put him in with. I want to see him with one of these young guys, man. I want to see him with Teofimo Lopez. I want to see him with, Devin Haney. I want to see him with those guys because I think he's in that same caliber, and he's already had to deal with the disappointment of losing and then coming back, which I think has made him mentally really tough. So look out for lightweight Felix Verdejo from Puerto Rico, 27-1, 17 knockouts. The last card in the bubble was a lot of fun. It was this past Tuesday, the 21st. I think there was 4 or 5 fights on there, and all of them were basically worth talking about. The opening of the card was Isaac Dogboe moving up in weight to fight a guy named Chris Avalos. Dogboe, you may have seen, beat Jesse Magdaleno and then lose 2 fights to Emmanuel Navarrete at 122 pounds, moving up to 126, fighting a decent fighter, and really putting on a complete boxing performance. When I saw Dogboe the last time, he could not avoid a punch. The guy was just taking shot after shot, and it looked to me like those Navarrete fights were the kind of fights that you could be maybe not the same when you leave the ring. You leave something in the ring. And he's kind of completely retooled his game into a more defensive boxer puncher style, which I think is much more effective for him, particularly as a shorter fighter. This fight, he was moving his head on the way. He was very flat-footed, but he was coming forward, and he was moving his head and his upper body on the way in, counter-punching. Sometimes with offensive fighters, and particularly Dog Bay, sometimes he kind of sits in the pocket and he settles for doing the catch and shoot, meaning he'll just take it on the glove so he can shoot back when he could make those punches miss. He could get out of the pocket and start something new. Sometimes he just stays in a little too long, but the way I was watching him and the way he was moving his upper body and being smart, there was stretches where he looked kind of like Canelo or like a Andre Berto. He looked like a really good, athletic, come-forward fighter. I'm not sure where he fits in at featherweight. I'd like to see him in with somebody a little better. Not that Avalos was a bad fighter, but Dog Bay was just, talent-wise, just several classes above him. So I'm definitely interested to see how Dog Bay fares against some of these other featherweights, and I think he's a tough fight for any of them. He's not easy work for anybody. The next fight after that was a Freddie Roach fighter, this guy from the Dominican Republic, Elvis Rodriguez, knocking out Dennis Okoth in the second round. Rodriguez is 8-0-1, 8 knockouts. So he's gotten all of his wins by knockout. This guy, a lot of times when you see power punchers, they're either really busy, as in they throw a lot of punches, or they're super easy to hit because they're working so hard on their offense that they're leaving themselves open. This is the most patient, young power puncher I've seen in a long time. I don't think in 2 rounds this kid took one clean punch to the face. His defense is so crisp, and he's right on the front foot in your ass the whole fight, and you can't touch him. I'm really excited on this guy, and I was like, now I get why Freddie Roach is in his corner. I don't think he took a single punch. The guy he was fighting with was more than competent. He was a good fighter. And Rodriguez just made it easy, man. He just kept making him miss. He kept touching him with the jab. And then when he could finally set that right hand up, he just sat down on it and put this guy out. And you could see in his eyes, he was like, oh, fuck. The fuck did I just get hit with, dude? He didn't see it at all. And these guys were junior welterweights. Rodriguez looks really tall and long for a junior welterweight, so I would imagine, especially him being in his early 20s, I would imagine at some point he's going to move up. I think this guy, with the defensive reflexes and the boxing IQ, there's no way this guy's not a big deal in a couple of years. It's very rare that you see young prospects that are this savvy defensively. So Elvis Rodriguez, check him out. The fight after that was a junior flyweight, which, for those of you who don't know, is 108 pounds. There are fighters that small. Was a junior flyweight fight with between Kim Clavel and Natalie Gonzalez, both undefeated at the time, 12-0, 6-0. Clavel's been a coronavirus nurse through all of this. So I guess in the last couple of months, she's stopped her work, and she's started training again. Yo, this girl can fucking fight, dude. This girl can fucking fight. She's kind of like a small female Lomachenko, where she's very busy, right? She's very busy. She's always throwing shots. There's always 3-4 of them at a time. She's right in your face and almost impossible to hit. And this girl she was fighting was really tough. She didn't give up. She had a nice little jab. She was trying to punch with her, but just didn't have the skill or the accuracy. And Clavel basically shot a shutout. I mean, the girl won every fucking round. And I don't know too much about the landscape of junior flyweight and women's boxing, but it would be really hard for me to imagine that anybody under 115 pounds could do anything with this girl. Her feet are great. She's just got the whole thing, man. She's got the whole thing. She's super aggressive. That her whole mentality is offense first. But she doesn't really get hit. I would like to see, what would happen if she fought somebody with a little more offense, but I'm excited about her. I would check out Kim Clavel if you can. Also just a great human being, fucking sacrificing her life to, help sick people, help people with the coronavirus. So big ups to Kim Clavel. The next one was a first round knockout. Apparently this guy, Edgar Berlanga, has won all 14 of his fights by first round knockout. They were saying on there that, nobody's gone past 2 minutes and 45 seconds with this kid. And he's from Brooklyn, so that makes me like him even more, a local kid. And he fought a guy named Eric Moon, who actually looked like he had some skills, and came out in the first couple of seconds and let a couple of hard ones go. I think just to get Berlanga's attention, like, yo, I'm right here. You can't just walk in. That lasted about 30 seconds. And then Berlanga was kind of in his ass. And then before you know it, this dude, Eric Moon, was just on the floor, face down. It looks like Berlanga's got that sudden, concussive, just like surprising power, where you don't know what the hard shot's going to be, because they're all hard. He almost has that like Sergey Kovalev type power, where it's like, how is he putting these guys out like that? Yeah, he's definitely a huge problem for anybody. And I think he's 24, 25 now. It looks like he could probably start stepping up the competition he's fighting. I would love to see him and David Benavidez, man. That would be a fucking banger. So all you New Yorkers, man, definitely keep your eye out for Edgar Berlanga and show him some love. I think this guy's going to be a champ sooner than later. And then finally, the main event was a 10th round knockout by Oscar Valdez against Jason Velez. Valdez was 28-0. Velez 29-7-1. Valdez a couple of years ago, man, between his hand speed, his power, because I know he was fighting at featherweight. This fight, he moved up to 130. He moved up to 130 a couple fights ago. But I think maybe this is the first time I've seen him at 130. He's kind of in between identities as a fighter. And it was a good performance. Look, he stopped the guy in the 10th round. He dropped him twice. But there was a lot of rounds where he just wasn't busy. Velez was just kind of walking forward, throwing pitter-patter, throwing a jab, little 1-2, just staying busy. And Valdez just had his hands in his pocket. And it looks like, having Canelo's trainer, Eddie Reynoso's trying to teach him that more counter-punching type style. But I don't know if that's his mentality. He looks a little lost sometimes, trying to figure out like what's the right thing to do as opposed to what's the effective thing to do. And I think he's just got all the pieces. So the idea that he would not dominate somebody like Jason Velez bell to bell, I think that's what was surprising. Velez is a tough guy, tough vet, been in there with a lot of good fighters, but for Valdez to be on the level he's at and not just smoke this kid, I was surprised. He just wasn't that busy. And I'm watching that fight. He's supposed to fight Miguel Berchelt next. I don't see how he goes 6-7 rounds of that fight. If he's going to be that passive offensively and just allow Berchelt to build up steam and get moving downhill, and then, he's just trying to keep him off. If he's just in a strategy where he's trying to keep Miguel Berchelt off of him, that's how you get stopped. You have to assert yourself as opposed to reacting to an offensive fighter. So this is not me saying I don't like him. I really like him. I like watching him fight. I just think that he's taken enough punishment as a young fighter in the Quigg fight, and he's trying to change his style maybe too much. Maybe he needs to add some moves into his old style so he doesn't take so much punishment in the pocket as opposed to just moving back and being passive. The defense was good, but it's like if you make somebody miss 4 or 5 punches and you take them on the gloves and then you don't answer, you don't win that exchange. At best, it's even. And then if it's a whole round of that, of you just making a guy miss but not answering, it's easy to lose decisions that way. Easy, particularly at that, that higher level of guy. But I thought this card right here was probably the best one they put on. And on top of that, I got to tell you, I think it really solidified that the bubble was a success. They canceled fights every week because of this virus. And it looks like they kept everybody safe, man. They kept the trainers safe. They kept the crew safe. They kept the refs and the judges and everybody safe. They did a good job. And I don't know if that model is going to sustain or if they're going to come back in the bubble. That wasn't really talked about. But My guess is that there's going to be a lot of promoters following that model to an extent, meaning, fighters come 2 weeks before the fight and quarantine in the hotel, or wherever the fight is. But so what's next, right? There's a lot that got signed after this fight and got announced. The first thing I saw was that Virgil Ortiz and Sammy Vargas are fighting in Indio on DAZN this Saturday. So that's, I believe, the first DAZN fight. I don't know what their COVID protocol has been so far for this fight. I'm going to be interested to see when I turn it on, but obviously I think that's an easy fight for Ortiz. I don't think Vargas is a bad fighter. He's just not. He's like 3-4 levels below him. He's lost to guys that I think Ortiz would probably smoke. Guys like Amir Khan and Louis Collazo. Good fighters. I would like to see Ortiz more against that caliber of guy at this point, against the Louis Collazo or Amir Khan level. But we'll see. I'm interested to see how DAZN handles the protocols and how long those guys have all been over there. It's going to be interesting. But the real fights that got announced were the PBC fights. These PBC cards that got announced are gigantic. So September 26th, they're going to have both of the Charlo brothers on a card together. They're going to have Jermell fighting Jason Rosario, who just won 2 belts off of Julian Williams. And then Jamal is going to fight Sergey Derevyachenko, who fought both Triple G and Danny Jacobs, gave him great fights. That's a great card. And it's honestly 2 fights that both of those guys could lose. So big ups to them for actually taking real challenges right out of the gate of this quarantine and doing it on a card together. I think, to be honest with you, I think they're both going to lose. I think they have an they don't entirely understand their place in the sport. I think they think that they're bigger and better than they are, and they haven't had that opportunity yet of necessarily being humbled, not just by the judges, because Jamel's lost the decision, but by another fighter really putting it on them. I think this may be that opportunity where they either are humbled and that makes them better, or they prove guys like me wrong and are elite level fighters. So I'm real excited about that card. The other big one they announced was that Gervonta Davis is going to be fighting Leo Santa Cruz for the WBA junior lightweight title on October 24th. And that fight I fucking love. I've been waiting for Leo to get like a big fight for so long. And it's finally here, man. And it's against Gervonta Davis, big fucking talented junior lightweight. 23-0, 22 knockouts. Nobody can go the distance with this fucking guy. But I think Leo's definitely got a chance. I'll do a prediction, obviously, down the line when we get closer. But I think Leo's got a chance. Reason being, you go back and you watch that Gervonta Davis and Gamboa fight, you can see Gamboa tears his Achilles in like the 3rd or 4th round. And he's 38 years old. And Tank just could not stop this guy until the 12th round, and he was getting hit, and he had periods where his back was up against the ropes. The stoppage was real iffy anyways. But I think that because of that, if you can't beat a 38-year-old fighter with a torn Achilles, if you can't knock that guy out easy work, Leo Santa Cruz is just all pace and all heart, dude. From the opening bell, he's right on top of you throwing shots. And he's not afraid to take them. He's not particularly slick, which is maybe where he's going to get in trouble. But he knows how to come behind a jab. He's not just taking punches to take punches. So I think that's a toss-up. And I'll obviously keep you guys more updated as I, nerd my way through the information and find out what's going on. I'm interested to see what the COVID protocols are on these bigger cards that are not going to have an audience, but that are not part of a more long-term bubble. Now, they said that these PBC fights on Showtime are all going to be, in the same venue in Connecticut. I can't remember the exact venue. So maybe the plan is to create a bubble-type situation and just have fighters and teams rotating, in and out of that bubble. We'll see, man. And then lastly, I'm sure everyone that's a boxing fan, everyone that's not a boxing fan's heard about this shit, But Mike Tyson and Roy Jones are going to fight in an exhibition on September 12th. It's probably, two of the greatest big men of all time. I think Roy's probably the fastest fighter I've ever seen. I would not want to see them fight anybody else but each other, as fucking middle-aged OG legends. I think it's good for the sport, and I think it's good fun as long as they're not trying to fight serious athletes. And I'm not saying they're not serious athletes, but they're in their 50s and they've been retired. And so if you're going to fight, you might as well fight your peers, right? I mean, it's what makes sense for them. They're going to have a good time. We're going to have a good time. I feel like it's a win-win unless somebody gets hurt. But you got to imagine they're going to be going in with real fucking sparring match mentality. So, yeah, I'll be looking forward to that. And that's it for this week, you guys. Thanks for listening to the Slip and Weave podcast. This has been episode 12. And I'll catch y'all next week. Peace.